I'm ace and feel like I'm falling behind. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So coming out as ace is a really big moment. For many of us, that moment of coming out, of recognizing that we're ace, is like the defining moment for us. It is the moment that we most clearly understand who we are and most clearly understand our own experience. And while there's a lot of relief in that moment, there's sometimes a misconception about that moment that that's the end of the road, right? That once we figured it out for ourselves, everything else will be a piece of cake from here on out. And that's simply not the case. We also have to figure out how that asexuality that helps us understand ourselves fits into the world around us. How does our asexuality interact with other people and the world? And one of the challenging ways that that shows up is this feeling that we can sometimes have as asexual folks of feeling left behind or falling behind our peers. We can see them moving ahead, building relationships, hitting milestones that we just aren't either ready to hit or aren't hitting ourselves for a reason we don't understand. And we can feel like there's something fundamentally wrong with us, that we're not keeping up with the people around us. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to talk a little bit about what that feeling is. It actually has a name. It's a thing. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we could do about that. How we can readjust the way we think about ourselves and our experiences that will help us combat that feeling of being left behind. So special shout out to Emily Garside, one of the Ace Dad Advice patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much, Emily. This is a wonderful topic, and I'm really glad to be able to creating this video with some help from my Patreon patrons. If you would like to join the Ace Dad Advice Patreon community, that would be great. Plenty of fun things happen over there. Every month, there are some patrons-only downloads, there's a patrons-only podcast, and at certain tiers, you even have access to some patrons-only live hangouts with me, Ace Dad. You can find out more about that Patreon over at patreon.com/acedadadvice. Would love to have your support there. Patreon.com/acedadadvice. So let's talk about this feeling of being left behind and what that feeling is. So this isn't specific just to people in the ACE community. This notion of feeling like you are falling behind your peers or not keeping up with the people around you is actually the result of a very powerful social construct called chrononormativity. A chrononormativity is a social construct, a set of social ideas and messages that tell us that in order to be a successful human, in order to be on the right track, there are specific kinds of milestones we are expected to hit at specific points in our lives. So chrononormativity can show up in our lives in a lot of different kinds of ways. It shows up when you sort of hear that there's a certain point in time that you have to stop being interested in stuff that kids like and you have to start enjoying more grown-up things. Believing that you have to attend college at this point in your life. You have to get a solid job at this point in your life. You need to get married at this point in your life. All of those things represent chrononormativity. At any place in your life when you are seeing that someone is insisting that there is an appropriate or correct time for this certain life marker to happen, that is chrononormativity at work. So why does chrononormativity exist? Well, chrononormativity is a way for society, the large capital S society and its structures, to push you into being the most productive member of that capital S society that you can be. By creating all of these social norms around hitting life markers at specific times, society is pushing us to be the most productive for society's goals as possible. If we abandon kid things at this certain point, if we make sure that we're having sex and starting relationships and building families at this particular point, if we're buying houses and doing that thing by this point in our lives, we are becoming of maximum benefit to society as a whole. That's what comes of chrononormativity. That's what chrononormativity is trying to do. It's trying to ensure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing culturally, and creating systems and creating places where you're going to feel bad if you don't. And the people around us participate in these chrononormative structures too. It's not just society providing messages to us that if you hit these marks, you're good. If you don't hit these marks, you're bad. The people around us are perpetuating those, and they're encouraging them too. Our parents are perpetrating these chrononormative ideas. Our friend groups are perpetrating these chrononormative ideas. We're comparing ourselves to the people around us in these ways that, say, oh, am I at the same point as them? Are they at the right point? Am I at the right point? Should I be where they are? Would I be better if I were where they are? All of this kind of interpersonal work that happens is also chrononormativity at work. So this very particular feeling of being left behind or falling behind your peers isn't really a true or real thing. It is the result of a social construct, a very powerful social construct working on you and ultimately everybody else around you all the time. So why are we feeling the impacts of chrononormativity as asexual folks? So ace folks have a fundamentally different relationship to sex and sexual attraction than allosexual folks do. And chrononormativity is designed to privilege the way allosexual folks grow and develop their relationship to sex and sexual relationships. Asexual folks are operating on a different scale entirely. So as we are developing our individual relationship to our sexual orientation and to how sex as an activity will fit or won't even be part of our own lives, we're moving at a different pace. We're moving through the steps in a different way. We are moving through different steps, and we are skipping steps that allo folks go through in their development along this path. And because chrononormativity is privileging the way allo folks experience that development, it looks like allo folks are moving at the right speed. And it looks like we, as asexual folks, having this very different relationship that is no less valid, it's just different. It feels like we are out of step. It feels like we are falling behind because we're not moving at the same pace as our allo friends are that are being culturally privileged by chrononormativity. We're already made to feel bad about our asexuality culturally, and this is just another way to drive that knife in our backs, so to speak, around how the culture perceives asexuality. It's another way in which asexuality can be pointed to as a deficiency or a flaw in someone. Not only are we not experiencing the right things or wanting the right things, we're also moving through our lives at a speed that is considered culturally and socially inadequate. It's important to note here that none of those differences are real. The speed at which any of us develops our relationship to our sexual orientation and ultimately to our relationship to how sex fits into our life, any speed is the right speed, as long as it is authentic and true to you. Every individual person moves at the speed that they need to fully actualize themselves and to fully understand themselves. So what can we do about this? The first step is to become more aware of how chrononormativity is working in our lives, searching out those messages that we're receiving from the culture or that we're receiving from the people around us. Anytime you're hearing someone say, oh, well, you're too old for that, or, you should really be doing this by now, that's chrononormativity. Pay attention to it and recognize it for what it is, a cultural message, not the truth. Secondly, when that feeling of being left behind or falling behind becomes overwhelming and starts to bog us down in really strong negative feelings, it's good for us to have an arsenal of positive thoughts that will counteract those negative ones. We should always be thinking about what we have accomplished by this point in our lives. What do we do on a daily basis? What have we achieved? What have we done? And we're not just talking about big accomplishments and big achievements, but it's everything that we've done. The people that we've helped, the friendships that we've nurtured, the positive that we've brought to our families, the positive we bring to our friend groups, our communities. Simply making it through the day sometimes is an accomplishment worth celebrating. If we arm ourselves with those positive thoughts when the negative ones of, you should be doing this, or you should be here, or we should be here by now, that really is going to help us push those negative thoughts aside and focus on what is positive. It's also just generally good practice to be positively thinking about yourself and your contributions to the world on a daily basis. A lot of us can get bogged down in negative self-talk, and having these positive things and these positive ideas about ourselves will be helpful in a lot of different kinds of situations. Final thought, you are not falling behind. Your asexuality is not causing you to fall behind your peers. We are all just moving through the world at our own pace, in different speeds, along different paths. And all of that is fine. Culture and society may not always believe that, but we as individuals and we as a community of ace folks can perpetuate the opposite idea, that it is okay. Where you are is where you're supposed to be. Take stock when you're standing in the spot right now of what's great in your life. Where are you? What are the good things here? What are the good things that are coming to you? What are the good things that you are putting out in the world? And don't listen to those voices that say that you should be somewhere else. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. You and your aceness are doing just great.